Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today by a very special guest. We've got NC State baseball play-by-play commentator Andrew Sanders joining us to recap what was a very special weekend for NC State. They went down to top-ranked Arkansas and defeated the Razorbacks in a 3-game series in Fayetteville to advance to the College World Series in Omaha, which will be Elliott Avent's second career appearance in Omaha over his 25-year career at NC State. Andrew, before we dive in and we get your initial reaction on everything, I know you were calling it on Sunday, and we'll talk about all of that. For our listeners at home, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Plus, you can always listen to us on thewolfpacker.com, where you should use promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. You can also watch us on YouTube, where you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please give this video a thumbs up while you're there. Andrew, thanks again for joining us today. We saw the call. I listened to your call this morning multiple times. It was an awesome call. Here come the Wolfpack. And I also saw the behind-the-scenes Twitter video that you had, that you posted on your Twitter account there. So my first question for you, Andrew, before we get into the baseball details of what unfolded this weekend, as a play-by-play broadcaster, how do you prepare for those big moments when you know that sound is going to be replayed over and over again? Do you kind of like to have something in your head before it happens, or is it totally improv in the moment? You just say what's coming to you. How do you do it, Andrew?
Well, Justin, first of all, thank you for having me back again. I'm happy to join you again. It's a good question, and I think I try to walk the line where I don't have something necessarily written out where I say, okay, this is what I'm going to say if this happens. I like it to be somewhat natural, but at the same time, like you said, that's going to be the call that gets replayed over and over again. So, for people that regularly listen to the radio, I think they can more judge you on how you are over the course of an entire season, and they kind of know what you're all about. But for a lot of people that maybe don't listen in all year, that might be the one time they hear it. That'll be the call that'll be replayed. So kind of ultimately, that's how a lot of broadcasters can be judged, is by those big calls and big moments. So I like it to be natural, but at the same time, I usually like to have some sense of an idea of, okay, this is what's on the line. What might I say? So I kind of had an idea, if they went to Omaha, I might go with, and I could change my mind in the moment, right? But I thought Here Comes the Wolfpack would probably be a good one and a fitting one for NC State as they make their way to Omaha.
Well, I liked it. It wasn't too. Sometimes I think broadcasters get a little carried away. It wasn't too much. It was just the perfect amount of energy there, and I liked the call for the baseball team, because you don't hear the Wolfpack or Here Come the Wolfpack as much for the baseball game. So creative call there. And if you want to watch or listen to that final call, go give Andrew a follow on Twitter. It's at AJ Sanders PXP. That's AJ Sanders PXP on Twitter. You can also follow us at the Wolfpacker. Andrew, also another level of difficulty there. You're calling the game from your living room, so you're watching it unfold on TV, and sometimes it's harder to tell what's going on, particularly on that last home run where it looked like in real time I thought Jose Torres hit a moon ball over the left field bleachers because I couldn't find where the ball was. After playing it back in slow motion, it looked like it went into the second or third row of left center, but how is that? I'm sure you've had to do that for a good amount of this season. So how has that been, Andrew?
Yeah, just like everybody else, circumstances have changed over the last year. And so, that's how we've been doing road games this year that weren't within driving distance. So I've only been to a handful of road games this year. I know UNCG went to Carolina as well. But for the most part, I've been calling them from my living room. So it's a different kind of a challenge, but it's something that I was thrilled to be able to call games, because as we went into the fall, we weren't exactly sure how the college sports season was going to go, and I think all in all, it's gone tremendously well. And you bring up that Torres home run. Obviously, that's a huge moment. did have to pause because I saw that the left fielder looked like he was not going to make a play on it. The infielders looked like they knew it was gone. But I never saw that ball land, and I watched the TV replay a few times after the game just to see where did that ball go. And I still haven't. You found it, I guess. I still didn't see where it landed. And so I was texting people that were there and saying, did he just clear the bleachers? Because I saw no fan reaction of where the ball actually landed. But I just took that extra split second to make sure, because the worst thing I could do as a broadcaster, people are listening to their car and it's not a home run. You know what I mean? That would be horrible. So I didn't want to do that to people. And just, Torres takes the lead. Just kidding. I had to make sure that it was gone, and I never saw it land. But after that split second, I say, well, no fielder's making a play on it, so it's got to be over the fence.
Well, it was a no-doubter for sure. You could tell by the reaction by the fans. You could tell by the reaction of the fielders from Arkansas. It was a moment of beauty because you heard the sound of Torres's bat, followed by a collective groan from the fans, and then just silence as that ball sailed over the left center fence. But so let's talk about the series a little bit, because Wolfpack fans weren't exactly feeling great on Friday after a 21-2 loss in Game 1. Obviously, day one starter Reed Johnston struggled against that Arkansas lineup that had plenty of pop, as we were talking about, ahead of the series this weekend. But it almost seems like Arkansas maybe, they created too many runs on Friday, and maybe they should have saved some for the weekend, because it is a 3-game series and you have to win 2 games. It's not a run differential type of series. So how do you think it impacted how things unfolded over the weekend when there was such a lopsided result on day one? Do you think that maybe played a role in NC State's motivation heading into games 2 and 3?
Perhaps. It's hard to say. I just know that his team is themselves, and they weren't going to be rattled by the fact that they lost Game 1, whether it was 3-2 or 21-2. And certainly the players, I think most of the fans as well, what was going on. Like you said, it's not about run differential, and it's not about the first game. 80% team that wins Game 1 makes it to Omaha. So NC State is part of that 20% is able to battle back and played in some factor. I think most people knew that the Wolfpack at that point, they were down 7-1 and knew, look, if they're going to get, they're going to need the bats to really show up. And to Arkansas's pitching staff, which has been great all season long, able to hold the Wolfpack to really bother me, because it was saving its Game 2 and 3, and obviously they pitched tremendously well in the second.
Let's talk about how things unfolded on Sunday, because going into this series, all of the talk, even on the ESPN2 broadcast, all of the talk was about Kevin Kopps, and he has had an incredible season. I mean, the stat lines were just ridiculous for him. I mean, had a team high innings pitched, I think over 80 innings pitched all season. He goes 8 innings yesterday, high pitch count, but all season he's 0.67 ERA entering this game on Sunday. The strikeout numbers like over 100, less than 20 walks. I mean, the guy's a stud, and the guy's really experienced, and he's really poised for those big moments. And he was really good on Sunday. He just wasn't good enough to go 115 pitches as a reliever after pitching 20-plus pitches Saturday before. Do you think Arkansas got maybe a little bit greedy there, sticking him in the game at that point? Because you could tell the fatigue might have been setting in that 8th inning when NC State seemed to be getting the barrel on the ball a little bit more. They just weren't flying out of the ballpark quite yet. But, I mean, Arkansas made a really great play in the outfield that may have saved a double or a triple there in the 8th inning. What was your take? What would you have done if you were Arkansas in that situation? Because it seemed like Kevin Kopps was just on his last leg.
Yeah, I'm just a broadcaster. But I will say that Dave Van Horn is a college baseball, and I'm sure he made, obviously, like as Herm Edwards once said, you play to win the game. He's making the best decision that he thinks it is in the moment to get his team to Omaha. And you're right. Obviously, that kind of workload for a pitcher is not something you often see, especially when it's 90 degrees, it's humid. The NC State pitchers, Reed Johnston and Sam Highfield talked about that, about how tough the conditions were for pitchers. And you got to tip your cap to Kevin Kopps. I know Pack fans might be tired about hearing about him because from what I heard on the ESPN broadcast, they talked about him a lot, and deservedly so, because he's been the player of the year in college baseball, and you saw how good he was yesterday. And to put in perspective, he was that good yesterday, and that's by far his worst outing. I mean, you got to realize he had given up 6 earned runs all year, and this season had never given up more than 1 run in any appearance, in over 30 appearances. And so NC State, obviously, he got stretched out further, but NC State able to score 3 runs and hit a couple of home runs. Just shows you how good this offense is, because he's the nation's best pitcher. And so, NC State was able to do the unthinkable. I mean, they were the underdog against the unanimous #1 team that hasn't lost a series all year, and it just tells you that hey, the season is on the line. Obviously, that's who Arkansas wants to have the ball, and they have a pretty deep bullpen. They went with him all the way, and then went back to their Friday night ace who had pitched well, in Patrick Wicklander. So when the season, that list of guys that you trust, did. And I thought Kopps was tremendous, but credit to the Wolfpack for working, able to pick up a few hits, pick up a few walks, which he rarely does. Really had a great game plan for him going up against, one of the best relievers in college baseball he has done this year. I mean, there's been some great relievers in college. Houston Street is one of the only guys that could have. Was able to. I said coming into the game, I said, they're going to start Kevin Kopps, and at some point during this game, you're going to have to hit him. So it doesn't really matter if it's in the first inning, you see him for the first 6 or 7 innings, or you see him for the last 6 or 7 innings. So the 2-strike count, got that. He calls it a cutter. A lot of people would call it a slider. It's a pitch that he throws all the time, and he's basically unhittable. But Butler was able to take him deep, and then Torres came through in the clutch.
The common trait of this NC State team this year seems to be its resiliency, and it's really become a strength here in the postseason. I mean, you look at all the adversity this team has faced, whether on the field, off the field, pandemic, COVID. You think about last year, a team that looked like a team that was destined to go to Omaha, the season being, cut short last year because of the pandemic. Fast forward to this year, a slow start, a 1-8 start in ACC play. They managed to finish the season really hot. They played really well in Charlotte in the ACC championship and lost a tough pitcher's duel in the title game to Duke, who ultimately fizzled out in the regionals. And NC State's playing its best baseball in the postseason so far. They played its best baseball to date in the regionals, and then they played 2 really great games against the top-ranked team in the country this past weekend to get to Omaha. So, Andrew, what do you make of a team's resiliency? Do you think we value that too much or maybe too little when it comes to postseason baseball? Because at the end of the day, it is still sport and it's still about talent versus talent. But in a game like baseball, there's got to be something to having confidence and being able to overcome challenges and come back from deficits.
Yeah, I think resiliency is huge, and especially in baseball, because people that know the game of failure, it's a game where as a hitter, if you fail 70% of the time, you might have a Hall of Fame type career. I mean, it's just a game mentally, and this team showed their toughness, their mental toughness, their resiliency. It's a team of veterans. It's been one of the best defensive teams of the season. And there were a couple errors. There was one, that cost a couple of runs on Saturday, and there was an unearned run early on Sunday. And they don't panic. When they were 1-8 in the ACC, they didn't panic. This is just a team that believes in itself. They know how talented they are. This is a very, very close locker room, and these guys really enjoy being around. It's a close-knit team, and so when they're back against the wall, or maybe not even against the wall, but just facing some adversity. They were down in the regional final 4-0 with Louisiana Tech. no panic there, no worry. And then in a elimination game, winning a 1-run game on Saturday and another 1-run game on Sunday, they were trailing on Sunday 1-0 on an unearned run. And, this team they know they have 9 innings and they're going to play a complete game. And, I don't think they have too much concern when they get put in difficult positions because they have so much experience. They say, hey, we've been here before. And, it's baseball. There's no clock. It's 27 outs. And so they play, maybe you play till the final whistle. But, in baseball, and they just compete, every pitch, every at bat. Obviously, they're one of the best teams in the country.
Another thing that clearly sticks out about this team is just how much these players look up to and trust and want to go to battle every day for head coach Elliott Avent. Now in his 25th season at NC State, he's had a historic career himself, one of the most winningest active baseball coaches in the game right now. This is going to be his second trip to Omaha. He's been to multiple super regionals, and he's had his more than fair share of heartbreak over the years in the postseason. My question to you is, close follower of him and the baseball program, was there ever any times this weekend where maybe it was clear that, Avent's veteran experience, that going through all of the heartbreak over the years, was there ever any moves that you saw him make where maybe it was like, okay, maybe he learned this from a past heartbreak type experience and it's paying dividends down the road this weekend? Was there ever a decision, that he made, whether it be, going to the young arms after, Johnson had a pretty shaky start on day one? You basically, throwing in the towel, waving the white flag for that game 1 and saving your arms for the weekend and banking on the fact that you'll win game 2 and 3. Was there ever a decision over this weekend that maybe you thought, this is something that he's learned over the years and this is really coming up valuable this time, and it worked out?
It's an interesting question. I don't know if there was any specific moment where I say, oh, this was the same situation as this year, and then he went with the opposite approach. I don't think anything like that happened. Obviously, he made some key decisions, as any head coach is going to have to do in the postseason, and they all turned out great. And I think, his team loves him, and he loves this team, and he's one of the best coaches in college baseball. And, a lot of times, sometimes the head coach, hindsight is 20/20, and sometimes, if the team loses, some people will look back and say, oh, well, if they had just done X or Y differently, then things could have been different. But, all in all, it's not for me to really to critique any kind of decision he made, because he knows more about baseball than I will ever know. But also, you look at some of the key decisions, whether it's bunting in certain instances, or choosing when to change pitchers and stuff. I mean, everything worked out beautifully, and NC State was able to get the win. And I don't really know if that you'd have to ask him if there was something like that to where he brought it back to an earlier regional that he was in, or maybe something he learned when he was a young coach. But I think he pushed all the right buttons, and he gives so much credit to his team. He will tell you that he thinks at this point in the season, the first half of the year, you really got to coach guys up, and in the second half of the year, especially when you got veterans, you kind of got to let the team handle it. And obviously, he still has big decisions to make at certain times, but I think he really trusts his team to get the job done, and the team certainly trusts him. I mean, they and love the university, and all in all, it's just close knit locker room.
I think he took a little bit of influence in your answer there from Coach Avent, because he's one to typically, if he gets a question he thinks is better fit for somebody else, he's not afraid to tell you, why don't you go ask him that yourself? And you're right, Andrew, that would be a good question for Coach Avent. So maybe in the next press availability, you gave me a good question idea there, Andrew. But let's look ahead a little bit to Omaha, because NC State's still got more games to play, and they're still, I mean, it's great that they upset the top-ranked team in the country in the Super Regionals, and fans are going to be all excited about that for the next few days. But once they get to Omaha, there's another goal ahead of them, and all that goes out the window, and NC State's going to be hunting for a national championship for the first ever in program history. So where do you think NC State is position-wise? Because when you take out number one, well, then you get number one's path. So that has to have some value to it. And then you look at the other teams that are going to be in NC State's pod in Omaha. I believe Arizona already punched their ticket. They're going to be playing Stanford day one. Stanford blew out Texas Tech, in a 2-game quick sweep there in Lubbock. And then at the bottom of the bracket is Vanderbilt, who, just stymied ECU over 2 days with their 2 pitching aces. So what do you make of NC State's pod? Once you get to Omaha, I know it's a difficult route to the championship no matter how you break it down. But do you see an angle for NC State or maybe some good matchups? Or what do you think of NC State's chances at this point?
Yeah, well, once you get to Omaha, like you said, it's really tough. Only good baseball teams make Omaha. You're absolutely right. It's a great point you bring up. Once you beat number one, you get number one's path. And like you said, they'll get Stanford. I have not seen Stanford play at all this year, and I have not started prepping on them yet. I don't know a whole lot about them except what you said is that they just absolutely crushed Texas Tech in 2 games. They had, them and Tennessee probably had the 2 most dominant super regional performances. And like you said, Arizona and Vanderbilt there as well. Arizona scored a lot of runs against Ole Miss. You know about Vanderbilt's pitching. And they're the defending College World Series champions. So it's essentially another regional, and that's the way that the format is. That's the way it'll play out. And it's not going to be easy by any means because those are 3 other good teams in the pod. But, the Wolfpack has as good a shot as any team there. And Arkansas was number 1 pretty much all year, unanimous number 1. That was the best team in the SEC. They won the regular season and the SEC tournament. So that was an Omaha, no doubt, that was an Omaha caliber team that NC State just beat, and they're going to see some other great teams. So their chances, they're good. But at the same time, every playing for the same thing, and it's also just a very, very good baseball team. So you're going to see I can't wait.
Well, if you're NC State, you have to have confidence. You just took down number 1, a team that hadn't lost a series all season long and arguably, most likely, the best conference in college baseball in the SEC. You are a very good team if you go through the SEC schedule and don't lose a single series. Not to mention the game or the series clinching win being over the nation's best pitcher in Kevin Kopps, who basically pitched the entire game, 8 innings, and then gave up the game-winning run there in the top of the 9th after 118 pitches. So, Andrew, what does NC State have to do to make their chances the best to get to that final series? Because I know clearly the key is to stay in the winner's bracket, particularly when you're in NC State's situation with the limited pitching staff, a lean 5 guys you trust, basically. But there's also a little bit more space in between the games once you get to Omaha than it is in the regional. So from a pitching managing standpoint, if NC State is to lose a game, which one would make the most sense for them to try to stay alive? Because, is game 1, is it all or nothing in game 1? Or do you try to have some strategy and, see what you can do in 2 and 3? Do you want to try to get Vanderbilt on the 3rd game when you don't have to see one of their 2 aces? You just try to go win every game, right? But how are you going to manage that pitching staff up in Omaha?
Yeah, you brought up the biggest point, which is there is a little bit more time off. There is a little bit more space, and so that really helps. When you have a shortened and teams generally once they go to Omaha, they're going to shorten the bullpen quite a bit. It's the same as in basketball where you see, once you get into March Madness. All of a sudden, maybe you're not playing a 9-man rotation. Maybe that shortens to 8 or 7. It's kind of the same thing where you're going to see that because there is a little bit more rest. There was some people talking about Arkansas could throw Kevin Kopps a ton if they had made Omaha because you give him 1 day rest and who knows, it seems like he can just pitch all the time, and so that will be a benefit to NC State for sure. and to other teams, obviously, right, is where it's late in the postseason. I think there's only so much strategy. You would prefer to not see Vanderbilt until they've already thrown their two aces. Really, like you said, you just go out there, try to win every game, and again, it's just like a regional, so you're trying to stay 2-0, which the Pack nearly did back in 2013. Lost a close game to UCLA. Then you're really set up in the right situation. If you don't go 2-0, going through the losers bracket is a much tougher route. So that 2-0 start beating Stanford and then the winner of Arizona and Vanderbilt, that's really the ticket to making it to the national championship series. And that's the key thing about baseball is it's not one game. You get a 3-game series. So we're essentially kind of rebooting the postseason. And if you advance out of that, a super regional for the national title, and you're kind of restarting with, the top team, great competition, and there'll probably be a lot of close games.
I'll give Wolfpack.
I know.
Oh, God, it's okay. We're having a little bit of connection difficulties here. Apologies for the listeners at home. It's not on Andrew's end. It's totally on mine. So blame me. Direct all hate mail to me, Justin Williams, and the Wolfpacker. I'll give Wolfpack fans a quick rooting guide for the weekend. You should be rooting for NC State, obviously, on Saturday. You should also root for Arizona, I would say. I don't think you want Vanderbilt with one of their stud pitchers, but it's out of your control. So you just hope for NC State to continue winning and see where the chips unfold from there. For the listeners at home, Andrew, can you tell them where they can listen to you as NC State continues its path towards the national championship in Omaha?
Sure. Yeah, you can always tune in on 88.1 FM. That is the student station, the local campus station, and it carries pretty far out. Greensboro to Greenville. Outside of that range, you can always just use your phone, download the search for NC State baseball, and you can stream it that way as well. So you got a couple of options, whether you have a radio with you, whether you're in the car, or you just have your phone with you. That's pretty convenient too. And also, I should note that if you happen to be watching on TV, you can also sync it up, especially if you can. A lot of times, if you can just pause your TV, if you have for just a few seconds, you can sync it up pretty well. Or you can use Sync My Game.
We'll have all the details in the details of this podcast of how you can sync that up, because I know I was getting a lot of comments this weekend, Andrew, from NC State fans, tired of hearing about Kevin Kopps, tired of hearing about how good Arkansas is. So if you'd rather listen to a Wolfpack guy and Andrew while you're watching the games over the weekend, we'll be sure to have that information for you, and you can listen to Andrew. And you guys should listen to Andrew because he does a great job calling these games. And we thank him very much for joining the podcast today. Go give him a follow on Twitter at AJSandersPXP. You can also follow us at The Wolfpacker. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. We're on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play. Plus, you can always listen to us on thewolfpacker.com, where you should use promo code PACK60. That's promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. Give us a like on Facebook, too, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please give this video a thumbs up. So for Andrew Sanders, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.